Hello and welcome back to our channel. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. Everything I share here is purely speculation and personal opinion. The spoilers for Beyond the Gates, airing on Tuesday, March 3rd, focus on two suitors competing for Nicole's attention. At the same time, Nicole faces a battle of her own when she comes face to face with Leslie yet again. Meanwhile, a request from Bill's family leaves Haley deeply unsettled. The key points to remember are these: Carlton and Keel are locked in an increasingly fierce rivalry as the quiet hostility between them begins to boil over. Nicole is headed for another explosive confrontation with Leslie. And Bill brings up the subject of a baby once again, forcing Haley to scramble to protect her long-running scam. Nicole had believed that after all the heartbreak, after months of being boxed in by family pressure, by heavy memories, and by judgment always waiting around every corner, she had earned the right to enjoy a small piece of freedom for herself. This was not the reckless freedom of someone playing games with other people's emotions. It was the freedom of a woman who had spent far too long living inside a mold, weighing every move, every choice, every relationship as though her entire life were a test she was never allowed to fail. That is why dating, and feeling the attention of two men at once, was not just a passing thrill for Nicole. It felt like a delayed form of compensation. In those moments, she could still feel desirable, still capable of being chosen, wanted, and seen as a woman rather than merely someone expected to carry burdens, heal others, and endure. But what Nicole does not want to admit is that this feeling of freedom is being built on very fragile ground. She believes she is in control, but in truth she is standing between two fires, and both of them are already burning in ways far more dangerous than she realizes. Keel is the kind of man who makes everything feel easier to breathe. Around him, Nicole feels that she does not need to explain too much, does not need to turn every emotion into a clear promise or a serious long-term plan. Keel knows how to show up with softness, humor, and the kind of calm that makes it seem as though nothing can ever truly touch him too deeply. That is exactly what makes it so easy for Nicole to relax with him. He gives her lightness, the gentle spark of flirtatious conversation, the feeling of moments unburdened by responsibility. But beneath that easygoing exterior, cracks are beginning to show. He does not say much, does not react dramatically, does not openly demand that Nicole choose him, but that does not mean he is unaffected. In fact, the calmer he appears, the more quietly unsettling his discomfort becomes. Keel's patience is not exactly generosity. It feels more like a strategy, keeping just enough distance so Nicole does not feel smothered, while staying close enough that he does not lose his place in her life. He understands that if he acts possessive too soon, Nicole will pull away. So he chooses silence, he chooses to smile. He chooses to let everything unfold as though he feels no threat at all. Yet underneath, his pride is being scratched away little by little. He does not like sharing Nicole's attention, and he especially does not like being placed on equal footing with another man in a rivalry that has never even been officially named. His so-called ease is no longer genuine ease. It has become a carefully crafted shell hiding a sharper and sharper irritation. Carlton is different. What he feels for Nicole does not come from a passing spark or the simple attraction of an undefined relationship. It has been building for a long time, growing in silence, through every moment he told himself to be patient, to behave properly, to give Nicole space to decide for herself. That restraint made him think he was strong enough to endure the uncertainty between them. But the more real his feelings became, the deeper the wound to his pride. The moment he saw Nicole and Keel being intimate in Uptown a few weeks ago did not just make him jealous. It humiliated him in the most private way possible. He did not lose Nicole because he never officially had her, yet he still felt as though something he had waited too long for had been taken from him. What enrages Carlton is not simply that intimate image, but the sense that he is being pushed into the role of the backup choice, the man who must always stay polite, always be understanding, always wait his turn. For someone who has invested so much emotionally without making immediate demands, that feels like a humiliation he cannot easily swallow. He is beginning to wonder whether he is fighting for love or merely trying to salvage the part of his pride that has been badly damaged. The more he tries to remain calm, the more he can feel a quiet anger growing inside him. He still controls himself, still carries himself with composure, but in his mind, every gesture Nicole gives Keel now feels like a provocation. What is coming next is therefore not just a contest between two men pursuing the same woman. It is a collision between two different forms of possession, one hidden behind indifference, the other compressed beneath a pride that is close to breaking. Nicole is not foolish enough to miss the shift in the air. She sees the tension in Carlton's gaze. She notices that Keel's calm sometimes looks more like quiet observation than enjoyment. But instead of cutting off the uncertainty, she keeps dragging it out, partly because she genuinely enjoys being pursued by both of them, and partly because she is not yet ready to face the consequences of choosing. After too much pain, Nicole fears that making a firm decision would mean shutting the door on another possibility, accepting loss, and returning to the feeling of being alone. She tells herself that she has done nothing wrong, that she is only being honest about her present feelings, that adults have the right to explore before making commitments. But the truth is more complicated than that. Nicole knows very well that every day she delays, every ambiguous gesture, every time she allows one man to hope while still stepping out with the other, adds more pressure. She is not deliberately forcing them into confrontation, but she is not brave enough to end the situation that makes that confrontation inevitable. The issue is not whether Nicole is cruel. The issue is that she is using hesitation as a way to postpone pain, while that pain is being transferred onto others. And when a woman tries to preserve her freedom by avoiding a choice, that very avoidance can become the spark that sets everything off. While the atmosphere between Nicole, Carlton, and Keel grows increasingly suffocating, another battle far more direct is waiting for her. Leslie is not an ordinary rival. Leslie is the kind of person who treats conflict like a stage where she can test her own power of control. She does not necessarily need to destroy someone with one decisive blow. For Leslie, the thrill lies in slowly unsettling people, pressing on the exact weak spot, forcing them to destroy their own image. The way she calls Nicole Nikki is not simply a nickname. It is calculated, a repeated jab meant to belittle her, to remind Nicole that Leslie does not recognize the boundaries or respect Nicole demands. Leslie wants Nicole angry. She wants her to react. She wants her to slip out of the composed image she works so hard to maintain. Leslie understands that in a public conflict, the first person to lose control is the first person to lose, no matter who is right or wrong in substance. That is why every time she provokes Nicole, she is not merely entertaining herself. She is testing reflexes, measuring endurance, seeing how close her opponent is to the edge. It is psychological warfare, but it is not just a game. It is part of a larger strategy, because Leslie knows that if Nicole explodes at the wrong time, in front of the wrong people, in the wrong setting, the balance of power will shift instantly. Nicole understands that, but understanding does not make her immune. Her defenses are slowly turning into exhaustion and anger. She is not the type of woman who retreats easily, and certainly not someone who will let another person keep trampling over her without striking back. So every time Leslie deliberately pushes her, Nicole's pride rises even stronger. She wants to hit back. She wants to wipe that smug smile off Leslie's face. She wants to prove that she is not prey in Leslie's private little game. But that is exactly how she gets pulled into Leslie's rhythm. Nicole thinks she is resisting, when in reality she is reacting exactly the way Leslie wants her to. Their clash is therefore about more than two women who dislike each other. It is a war between one woman trying to preserve her dignity while being pushed harder and harder, and another who creates chaos on purpose to gain advantage. When Vanessa happens to witness the confrontation, its meaning changes again. The presence of a witness turns it from a private verbal battle into an event that can be spread, interpreted, and weaponized. Vanessa is not just standing there. She is a dangerous variable, because any choice she makes could deepen the fracture. If she sides with Nicole, Leslie will feel even more challenged. If she stays neutral, or worse, leans toward Leslie, Nicole will understand that she is becoming increasingly isolated in her own fight. And in worlds built on calculation, isolation is always the first step toward weakness. On another front entirely, Bill and Haley are walking into a different kind of crisis. One even darker because it is wrapped in the polished paper of a marriage that appears to be healing after trauma. After the robbery, Bill pours all of his attention into Haley, and on the surface, it looks like the devotion of a husband trying to protect his wife after a shock. But the more focused he becomes, the more his need for control begins to show. The fact that he brings up having a child again at this moment is not accidental. For Bill, family is not just emotional shelter. It is also a structure of attachment, a way to secure his position and tighten the bond in a form that is harder to escape. He may truly believe he wants to build a future with Haley, but deep down, that desire is tied to a fear of losing control. After a year of a marriage full of upheaval, after the miscarriage that left a void neither of them ever truly addressed, Bill's renewed focus on having a child is both longing and a test. He needs to know why Haley is still in this marriage. He needs proof that she is not there simply because of circumstance, appearance, or reasons left unspoken. That is why his request is not just a question about the future. It is a soft form of pressure, a demand for absolute commitment without ever openly calling it that. For Haley, this is the moment when the carefully crafted disguise nearly tears apart. She has lived too long inside a long-running con that she may once have believed she could control. But every long-term scheme eventually traps the manipulator inside the very snare they built. Haley does not want a child with Bill, not only because she is not ready, but because a child would make every fragile exit route she still has almost impossible. That child would become the true tether, the thing that would make it impossible to end the deception with one disappearance or one new move. She always knew this subject would come back sooner or later, and what terrifies her is not the question itself, but the fact that she no longer has many ways to avoid it without making Bill suspicious. Even more dangerous is the truth that Haley once wanted to end everything in the most extreme way possible. The fact that she once tried to poison Bill with a slow-acting toxin reveals just how rotten this marriage has been for a long time, to the point that death itself once seemed like an escape route. If she backs down now and agrees to the idea of a child, it will not be because love has returned. It will be a strategic surrender, a way to buy more time because she has not yet found a better way out. But if she refuses, she will have to face Bill's suspicious gaze and the risk of revealing that there is a distance between them too vast to bridge. Haley is trapped between two poisonous choices: continue lying in order to survive, or tell part of the truth and risk her own safety. That internal tug-of-war is making her colder, sharper, and more dangerous. Because when someone is backed into a corner and still cannot run, they often turn toward the most destructive instinct of all: strike first before they are exposed. What makes Haley's situation truly terrifying is not only that Bill may grow suspicious, but that Bill himself is in a state of instability he does not even recognize. After all the recent upheaval, he has become even more inclined to cling to whatever he considers his. In Bill, love cannot be separated from power. The more he wants to keep Haley, the more he pushes her into suffocation. And that devotion, which might appear valuable on the surface, creates the opposite reaction, making Haley want to escape even more. The tragedy is that both of them are lying to themselves. Bill believes another child could save their marriage, while Haley believes that if she can just delay a little longer, she will find a path out that involves less bloodshed. But in relationships that have been poisoned at the foundation, every delay only makes the eventual explosion more violent. The longer it drags on, the more real the danger becomes of one desperate move from Haley or one fit of rage from Bill when he finally feels betrayed. Meanwhile, the storyline involving Eva, Leslie, Ted, and Isaiah carries a different kind of tension. On the surface, it looks like concern, advice, and family-oriented meetings. Underneath, however, it is a web of control, scrutiny, and unspoken truths. Eva's relationship with Isaiah is moving in a direction that gives her hope. That is one of the few things in her life that makes the future feel less bleak. But the moment a relationship begins to grow serious, outside hands begin reaching in. Leslie does not hide her enthusiasm when pushing Ted to contact Isaiah, outwardly playing the role of a mother invested in her daughter's love life, wanting things to go in the right direction and endure. Yet her eagerness is difficult to see as pure. Leslie is not the kind of woman who stands back and simply offers blessings from afar. If she gets involved, it means she wants to shape the game. Urging Ted to approach Isaiah is both a way of increasing her influence over Eva's relationship and a method of testing whether this man fits her deeper plans. Leslie may hide behind the language of care, but what she truly wants is total authority to interfere, the reassurance that no turning point in Eva's life happens outside her reach. Ted is not entering that meeting with the simple attitude of a father who wants to get to know his daughter's boyfriend. He carries far more complicated layers of thought. As a man accustomed to keeping certain things buried, Ted cannot look at Isaiah as just a new name in Eva's life. He sees him as a potential risk, a doorway through which old secrets could return, a factor that could disrupt the already fragile order within the family. So even if the meeting is disguised in politeness, at its core it is still an examination. The questions Ted asks, however gentle or roundabout they may seem, will not be harmless. He will want to know who Isaiah is, where he comes from, how much pressure he can withstand, what he is hiding, and most importantly, whether he could become the kind of disruption Ted fears might unearth the things he has tried so hard to keep buried. The more politely Ted behaves, the heavier the pressure becomes, because people often feel most suffocated when they are being scrutinized in an atmosphere of icy civility. For Isaiah, the discomfort will not come from ordinary questions, but from the sensation that he is being pulled into a family maze where every smile could be a disguise. If he and Ted truly sit down together, he will understand very quickly that this is not just a casual introduction. Every question about the Hawthorne family, about his background, about his future with Eva, can become a trap forcing him to choose between honesty and self-protection. If he hesitates too long, Ted will see weakness. If he answers too firmly, Ted will sense defensiveness. Isaiah may genuinely love Eva, but love does not protect him from the feeling of being cornered. In fact, because he does care, he is even more likely to react strongly when he feels that his relationship is being inspected like a project in need of approval. The problem is that if Isaiah loses his temper, he will turn himself into exactly the kind of suspicious man Ted fears. But if he is too accommodating, he will allow his personal boundaries to be invaded from the very beginning. His greatest challenge is not simply answering the questions. It is preserving his dignity and his clarity in a meeting where everything could turn into a polished interrogation. Eva stands in the middle of all this with a heart full of both hope and anxiety. She turns to Tomas for advice not only because she wants outside perspective, but because she can already feel the pressure closing in from every direction. She wants to believe her mother is acting out of concern. She wants to believe that a meeting between Ted and Isaiah could be a mature and necessary step. But her instincts are telling her that everything is moving too fast, too forcefully, and not entirely for her benefit. What hurts most is that Eva cannot easily push back without being branded ungrateful or immature. When adults use concern as a justification to impose their choices, the person caught in the middle often loses the right to even name their own discomfort. So Eva is forced to swallow both frustration and fear while trying to keep her relationship from being distorted by outside agendas. Yet that very effort to preserve peace is what makes her most vulnerable. Because once the hidden truths of the adults collide with her future, Eva will be the first person forced to suffer the consequences of decisions she never fully had the power to make. Taken separately, each of these conflicts is already dangerous enough. But when placed side by side, they create a suffocating portrait of people desperately trying to appear in control while their inner worlds are already cracking apart. Nicole thinks she is enjoying freedom, but in truth she is igniting a confrontation between two men driven by different forms of possessiveness. Leslie thinks she is merely playing psychological games with Nicole, but the more she pushes her rival toward the edge, the more inevitable a major backlash becomes. Bill thinks he is strengthening his marriage through the idea of family, but he is actually driving Haley closer to extreme choices. Haley thinks she still has enough time to find an escape, but the longer she waits, the more she drowns in the web of lies she created herself. Ted thinks he can protect order by controlling the situation, and Leslie thinks she can shape her daughter's fate according to her own will. But it is the younger people, Eva and Isaiah, who may react most fiercely when they feel trapped. None of them is truly in a safe position. And the most frightening part is not what has already happened, but the fact that all of them are approaching a threshold where one more provocation, one more rejection, one glance at the wrong moment could strip away every last layer of civility. When that happens, love will no longer be called love, concern will reveal itself as control. And the people who once believed they were calm enough to master the game will realize that they too are nothing more than pieces being moved by anger, jealousy, wounded pride, and fear.